questions. We don't have audio for this, just because it'll mess with the microphone and what we're doing here. So
I know the sound effects. I can do it.
yeah, that's fine. Cool. So I was just wondering and thinking about this today. What was your guys' background before maybe even games, or was it always games before Hollow Knight and Team Cherry?
My main background was in animation. I worked for another local company called the People's Republic of Animation for a long time. About 10 years ago, I think I started there. I was an art director there, then a director there on projects. After a while, I left and created a 2D focused animation studio that's called Mechanical Apple, with a colleague of mine, Jason Pammon, and basically used the 2D pipeline that I developed at the PRA and around that, and around some of the films that I'd worked on for that studio. And that 2D animation pipeline is basically what is used to create a lot of the Hollow Knight assets, so it's pretty much a direct flow on into this game.
Yeah, professionally before Hollow Knight, I was a website designer, developer, mainly freelance. So it wasn't super related to games and stuff. But in the meantime, I did like a little bit of just hobbyist game stuff. So I taught myself Flash when that was a thing. I made like a couple of games in that. Played around with things like RPG Maker and everything. And then had been working on like a platformer in a program called Stencil, which is kind of similar to Game Maker, for a little bit before Ari and I started working on some Game Jam games and then Hollow Knight.
Cool. And so where did Hollow Knight come from, and how did you guys even meet? How did that all happen?
We actually knew each other from a while before that. We even briefly worked on a Flash animation together, and William is like fully proficient as an animator and artist himself. So like, which I think probably is evident in the style and the effects and the how well put together a lot of it is. So we briefly worked on a Flash animation. So we probably, I don't know, that was like literally a night or a day. And then we came together for these game jams again after probably a long time. Specifically, it was because he sent me a demo for this Lulander, this small platformer that he was making, which I believe may be available for people to play.
Oh, I think there's a demo on Newgrounds.
Yeah, it was just a demo, but it was kind of like, it was still like...
A lot of it did end up being cannibalized for Hollow Knight.
Exactly. And it used like the Stencil has a really good, the engine that was being made in has a really good foundation for like solid jumping and platforming, and that was being put to good use.
Yeah, I'd never tried making a platformer until I looked at the Stencil thing, and it's one of those things that comes with a lot of inbuilt character controller stuff. So I had like a wall jump and double jump, and the basics for characters taking damage and dying and stuff. So I went through and edited my own versions of that, and we learned a lot from that. And then a lot of that kind of flowed straight into what kind of became the Hollow Knight prototype.
Yeah. The final game is in Unity, but that's more.
Yes.
We just expanded beyond the bounds of what is probably reasonable in Stencil, which is maybe more like a game maker, or is more focused on making something that's not 60 hours long and played across many different platforms.
Yeah, we'd actually met up a few times to do a couple of game jams, along with Rowan, who's another friend of ours. And the first game jam we did was like was it Global Game Jam or Lindari? I can't remember. But the theme of it, this was a few years ago now, like 5 years maybe. The theme was 10 seconds. And the basic idea we came up with was like a top-down, you're a bug, and you've got 10 seconds. Every 10 seconds you have to eat a fruit or you die, and you have to go around an island and collect masks.
Yeah. And the reason you're a bug is because they're small and they're really simple to draw, which works fantastically in a game jam and has flowed through to this larger game. And it's also probably one of the real strengths of this game, which is all the content is really, that's in the specific instances of it, is really cheap and quick to create. So creating characters is really quick, creating enemies, bosses, all of that kind of stuff, and it meant that we could go really far and elaborate and and not feel worried when the scope keeps creeping out.
There's even like a super fertile thing for just, it's something that's really easy to come up with ideas for, which is another thing that kind of made it easy to kind of keep expanding on. Like an underground insect kingdom is, you just think of the different bugs that there are and then find a place to put them. It's like, sometimes you hit on like an idea like that makes it really
because
easy
it's
to come up with
underground, you
stuff.
can just keep going down.
An old ancient bug kingdom.
The underground element is part of the genre as well, which is that you need the verticality, so you need roofs and reasons to go up to kind of keep everything contained or down.
Yeah, which fits the idea of like a nest of bugs and stuff, expanded out into like an old medieval kingdom. So when we worked on that game, it's called Hungry Night, and is also playable on Newgrounds. It actually has this character as the main character, like pretty much exactly as you see him, except top down. I think some of his art from then might still be in the game, or it might
I actually think a lot
over.
of his art. I think like his idle and his run and various things.
Well, he had a walk, so I think
that's still in the
book.
Yeah. So to get this up and running, which actually this also began as a game jam, another game jam. It was just a case of adding a jump, and then we could get run. We were off.
So doing those game jams and the short animation together, was that like a way to find out if you worked well together, and is that testing the waters kind of thing?
Not initially. I mean, probably the game jam stuff was, maybe very vaguely, but not with some sort of serious intent of like this is like if it turned out terribly, sure. It wouldn't have been like we wouldn't have seen it as a dismal failure and being depressed.
And so Hollow Knight came about through a lot of things and sort of accumulated a bit more in a game jam. And what was it at that game jam and that particular prototype that you had that you decided you want to work on it more, or that you had something like there was something there that you thought was worthwhile to continue working on?
Most of the stuff in the game jam itself, apart from the character and some small visual elements, didn't carry over so much. I mean, you worked on concepts after that, though.
That's true. Yeah, I was sort of developing some ideas, which I think is still out there somewhere as kind of concept art, but it was more maybe in the vein of like a short film, or maybe in the vein of possibly a game.
It looks like an adventure game or something.
Yeah, or an adventure game. It was just something that I was still curious about. And then, like William said, it's really fertile sort of visual stuff to develop.
Yeah, and Ari had shown me these concepts, and the idea of like carrying on with this character in like a kind of like an underground insect world was kind of there with us for a bit. And then this other global game jam came along, and it was going to be one weekend. I was busy for some reason, and I said I was going to be able to do it. And then when it was announced, what would you call it? The
theme for it.
Yeah, it was Beneath the Surface.
Yeah.
And Ari rang me. I was like, that's a really good theme. So we said, all right, well, we'll just, instead of doing the game jam, because didn't have time, we can just do our own like. What do we say? A month? A couple of months?
That. Yeah.
Like a game that kind of has this character, this world beneath the surface, and we talked about that. And the kind of natural thing to think of was this kind of 2D side-on, a little adventure game, like an ant's nest type thing. And then from there we started sketching out ideas. I did like a bunch of art. I started making like the basic controls for the character, and a lot of that stuff. Oh, I'm gonna die. A lot of that stuff is like final-ish, like is like really evident in the final game.
Yeah, a big part of the way we work is we don't really concept things, and we try and get it right the first time because it's just us.
And move on quickly as well.
Yeah, we only have so much energy, so we just like make things and then we use everything that we make.
So on that, then did the process change much from working on like the game jam game to working on the full product?
Well, I mean, there was the engine change to Unity had a fairly was a pretty major step, but it was more like an expansion, so it was a fairly natural progression from us. when the game was at this size, and then we moved into a larger and much more complicated framework, which was Unity. As the game started to get bigger, and the game just kept escalating. Certainly, the Unity engine allows us to make it infinitely large, and we almost did that. So, so that was the right step.
And how did it work? Like, a lot of this, I'm sure, was just doing it part-time to begin with, was it? And just, like, working together on it. And was it a situation where it just started taking up more and more time, or something you were just really enjoying doing, and then you just wanted to work? Like, what was the shift into full-time working on this?
Yeah, well, I suppose we went to we developed it in part-time to a point where we thought, well, look, this is big enough to be like something that we could sell for a few dollars, maybe, if we packaged it up. And then we thought, well, look, we'd really like to make this bigger, and we're enjoying the development of it, and we would like to potentially put more time into it. So we took it to Kickstarter at that point, ran a Kickstarter campaign.
Which we spent maybe a month-ish preparing, as well as working on the game.
2 or 3 weeks, and a lot of that was developing the game. And we actually developed the game a lot through the live period of the Kickstarter, just so we could show off new things that, ideas that we had. That Kickstarter was an Australian Kickstarter, but it did quite well. I think it got...
Your initial goal was 35, and then it got to about 58 by the end of it.
Okay, yeah, cool. So it went quite well, and from there, that was sort of the triggering point for us to say, well, now we can work on it full time for a period.
And that's also when we when the extra steps of setting up a proper business.
Yes,
we got an office in town,
and we brought in Dave.
Yeah, and we brought in Dave,
coder.
Yeah, and also that's when we moved to Unity. So it was during Kickstarter itself when we started looking at things like Wii U stretch goals, that we decided, and also Stencil was kind of designed mainly for one person, so it was hard to collaborate.
Yeah, the biggest thing was
multiple people.
Collaboration.
So yeah, that was at the start of 2015, because the Kickstarter was at the end of, I think. Yeah, so that was we set up the business, got an office, got Dave in, and changed engines, and began full time the three of us working on it.
And Alan and I were talking about this just before, and about the Kickstarter stretch goals, which you just touched upon then. And looking back on it now, and the initial goal of 35,000, and then the stretch goals, which were only about some 4,000, some 6,000 for what was quite a bit of content in retrospect. And looking back on that now, did that seem like the right amount for what it was worth, or has it sort of exploded? A lot
It's
more?
kind of, I mean, we don't really think about the amount once it's in there. It's kind of, yeah, I mean, I guess we didn't really think about it as much as we need X amount of money to do each of these things. We just tried to think of stuff that would be interesting to make, and then kind of tiered it off in a list.
We didn't make it crazy unrealistic for us in the way that we were developing it at the time, which was Stencil, and it was a simpler product. The best thing about the Kickstarter was, one, I mean, it's validation of your idea, that there's an audience for it, but it's also a great legally binding incentive to finish things, and that's all I needed. And obviously I work for William as well, and we're actually still delivering on some of the elements of that, notably the Wii U becoming the Switch release, which is coming up, and we have another playable character, and we've released a bunch of other content that isn't even related to the Kickstarter at all, that is just stuff that we really wanted to include as the game came about.
Yeah, there's also some other stuff that was included as goals that we didn't meet, that we... Wait, do we hit Colosseum?
We did hit Colosseum. It's
hang on.
confusing because we hit it later.
Okay, we did that as a slacker backer thing. Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Discord. So that one did make it in.
I was wondering about some of the... You work with the people, some of the backers, and put their ideas in the game, or their characters in the game. What's that process like, and what's it like working with someone who may not be familiar with how games are made and the process, and what would go in?
Universally fantastic, actually.
Yeah, it was great.
We
didn't have any issues.
things.
Yeah, I was wondering how it would go, but it was
very interesting.
Yeah,
we will elaborate, because some of it is fascinating. One person provided a panda character, which, because everything's insects, had to become a panda bug. And that's really, like, that actually makes for a much more interesting character, because we
heaps of places that
ourselves wouldn't think of that.
Yeah, heaps of stuff that that wouldn't have thought of, and then we get to kind of interpret in our own way, which then gives it another layer.
Yeah, that's...
So like everything, like there's nothing that a fan that's worked with us on, like a backer, that doesn't feel like it belongs in the world, and it just like gives it like a whole like other dimension of kind of interesting stuff. A lot of the backer characters ended up being like really present in the game. Like Cloth is like a character that you meet a bunch of times during the game, which was a backer character. Yeah, like people, and there's like a kind of varying degree of, some people just sent us like a brief description, because some people would draw sketches for us.
In MS Paint?
Yeah, something, yeah, or like just like Notepad and stuff,
Notepad.
or like really like well done like renderers, and so some of them were like artists in their own right. Yeah, and some would send like a huge amount of dialogue and stuff, and we'd incorporate that where we could. It was good. Yeah. Something we'd definitely be keen on doing again.
We'd love
I
to
think.
do it again.
Yeah, so that's like maybe an indication of how well it went.
Well, I think something that might be useful to the crowd that we have here as well is, what did you do preparing for Kickstarter leading up to it? Because back then, 2014, it was a bit more of a hotbed, there was a lot of success going on. And now there's a lot more people jumping on it now as well. So what would you recommend?
Just the main one is back lots of Kickstarters. I think I'd spent $1,000 on Kickstarter that year, and almost all of that stuff has now come through and been fantastic. Like, whether that's, I mean, like, if you're you have to be a little bit critical, obviously, and like the biggest thing about Kickstarter is like people see it as a risk. So like everything you have to do is reduce the perception of risk. And one of the big things for us was we had a playable build of the game when we went to Kickstarter. This was the stencil build. It was the engine we were going to release in. So we were a fair way along with the process. But because I'd obviously been backing a lot of campaigns and following, and that you get frequent updates, so you get to follow what they do. All you have to do is see all the things you like and mimic them, and see all the approaches that work really well that you really enjoyed, and follow a similar trend. I mean, obviously, the core of that is, do you have a product that is actually interesting to people? Like, are you pitching something that people actually want to play or want to read? But that worked out. Like William said, we did about 3 weeks, I think, or 3 or 4 weeks maybe, of pre-planning and prepping the content.
So, and it's included so prepping the stuff that you see on the main Kickstarter page, as well as updates. We try to be really frequent with updates, try and keep everyone's kind of like energy and engagement up. Did a lot of key art. We did a trailer, obviously, and then we actually ended up doing a second trailer during the Kickstarter, because we thought that maybe the initial trailer didn't quite show off enough of the game.
The large fly boss that William just beat a moment ago was done during the Kickstarter.
Yes.
Specifically because it would be a cool thing to show off, and it was like a fun thing to make even during the intense 30 days that ran.
Yeah.
And the other huge thing about that Kickstarter, I mean, Kickstarter's very good at surfacing successes, so obviously there are a lot of failures that don't get seen. I mean, tons of success, it's unbelievable. And just so many games out of it now. You could play, 10 years of great games purely from Kickstarter. But I totally lost the point. That was really important.
So you'd say, in regards to something like a Kickstarter campaign, it requires a lot of attention. It's not something you can just put on in the background and hope for the best.
Absolutely. No. Oh, well, I mean, maybe you could try that, because if you just want to gauge the interest, some people very successfully run 2 or 3 campaigns, the first 2 maybe being unsuccessful, but learning along the way, and then the third one is a success because they've sort of honed their idea. The point was that I totally lost was that it was our first, it was the first real marketing of the game. So the game was unknown and we were unknown. So it was our first platform to talk to people, and some enormous amount of the people who backed our game were through Kickstarter and not from external sources, even though obviously we did talk to press and all that and had quite a few articles.
By far, right? Like the bulk of people
massively,
had discovered us through Kickstarter itself.
Yeah. and that was something we talked about, Adam and I was talking about recently as well, and it's something I've seen where a lot of successful Australian studios, like, now I'm having just a massive mind blank, League of Geeks with Armello, Defiant Development with Hand and Fate series,
Yep.
they both got their games going through Kickstarters, and although obviously money is sort of the forefront at the moment when doing a Kickstarter, a lot of what they've talked about from the outcome of doing it was that initial fan base that they built around it.
That's way more important than the money. Like, just having people
And
who are
press
following
and stuff as well.
Yeah, press and validation that your idea is worth pursuing for the 2 to 2.5 years that we pursued it. I should also say that that Dan and Morgan of Defiant and Trent Custers of League of Geeks helped us directly through that Kickstarter, which is just that during that process we talked to them and they gave us their insights on what they thought was very successful, and that was only through reaching out and asking them what they advised and what their do's and don'ts were.
All right. You had a few questions in regards to development.
Yeah. Just while I think of it, we were talking about the art before and the community. You have a lot of amazing fan art that comes in. What's it like seeing all the art that your community is developing and redrawing and reworking your characters?
It's super inspiring, I think. It's very unexpected.
It's cool just seeing how many variations there are. That's my favourite part.
Yeah. It is really, really nice. I mean, it's not just the fan art. I think perhaps the major reason for this game's success at all is the incredible community that built up around it, which, I mean, the game is part of that, but it's more like the people out there who've gone out and championed it and connected to it and have become really passionate about it, and whether that's sending us fan art or the constant emails that we get, you know, which are really like heartfelt and their enjoyment of the game, and certainly like the people spending all that time illustrating and spending like existing in this strange bug world is quite rewarding.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess one of the questions I had from playing the game, I guess it's a silly thing, but you've got grass, you've got breakables in every single room, and I entered the game going, all right, I'm going to cut some grass, I'm going to get a coin, I'm going to get something from it, and nothing, it seems like nothing you break gives you a reward, and so I was wondering, are the environmental things in the game to help the player feel more connected with the world, like the world more interactive, or is it something to do while traversing the environment? Because I break everything.
Yeah.
So cool.
I
do you want to
mean,
talk about that? Because it is very important.
yeah, it's. I mean, the answer is that it's both of those, but probably like, I mean, the initial reason why we put it in was probably just like even like as an instinctive thing. We kind of, that's the sort of thing that we enjoy. Yeah, a lot of it is like that the world is really physical and like super responsive. Anything where, you know, you can perform a small action and get like a big reaction, you know, feels really good. It is something to kind of like occupy yourself with as you move around. You can like break stuff. You know, there's even like some light kind of gameplay stuff where a lot of the stuff you can actually bounce off of, which gives you kind of like, there are actually like a few skips you can do, or you know, helps you kind of move around the environment.
I was actually watching a speedrun today, and I noticed that bouncing off of not even just enemies, but just things within the environment as well was helping them get through stages quicker.
Yeah, it was a glitch, right? It was sort of an unintended
unintended
side
some of them
effect
are
is a better
unintended.
word.
Well, it's like a mix of stuff where, you know, sometimes we put like a flying enemy in specifically so you can lead it over and like skip a section.
So I
And then
mean
there's-
specifically the spike bouncing, which
Oh, is that what we're talking about? Spike bouncing? I
That.
thought you were talking about bouncing off furniture.
Well,
which are they
well,
like-
yeah. I mean, that is even an
There was
extension
also,
of that.
because you can bounce off spikes as well, which is kind of like, we never actually tell you that, but it lets you get to areas a lot faster, which was initially a glitch because because spikes damaged you, so I just gave them the code that enemies had to damage you, which then meant that when you down slash them, you bounce off them as though they were an enemy.
And you were found with testers that most people just would not have tried it because they just wouldn't.
Oh,
have
I mean,
thought of it.
I don't know. This is way before we had testers, so I mean, we just did it and thought it was really fun. But decided that it was never going to be required or like kind of signposted. So it's something that eventually, like almost everyone discovers by themselves, and because you know they're kind of super conscious of the fact that they've discovered it themselves. You know, they get that aha moment that it's like a a lot of the time it's like a pretty special
But
feeling.
William was touching on it before, and it is really important to us that idea of presence in the world, that the character is, or you as the player are physically within the world, and like breaking signs and whatnot is part of that. But the recoil when you like impact an enemy,
Or a wall like this.
or a wall, which came in very late, but I think is one of, if not the best thing in the entire game. It's very, very close. You can't unfortunately hear the great sound effect. It has pitch shifting, but that kind of stuff. That's the stuff that probably that fixates us as we're making. It's all of those small extra interactions.
It's the small details.
Yeah, well, it's just the things that make it more a real place, because that's the way we're trying to think about it as we're making it, or anything that we make this is a world that a player gets to go to and explore and discover.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the decisions around things are like just what reaction kind of makes sense, not necessarily like what do we need to happen, or what from like a gameplay perspective should happen here. But doesn't it make sense that the character can do this, or but if they do it at this point, then how should the world? What makes sense for the world to react?
Not that we're unique as developers.
No,
in that's certainly a very common thing
Yeah.
for developers to concern themselves with. In like a 2D game, it's an interesting dimension as well, because these characters are sort of floating around in a strange
It helps
space
that
without a lot of physical interaction.
A lot of that stuff is fun to make as well. Like it's fun to make stuff break and like have all this blood and smoke come off of stuff. It's like those fun little finishing touches that are a lot of the time like the most fun to add.
I was going to ask about that the interaction with the sword and such. And when the player starts, when you attack something, it knocks the enemy back and it knocks you back a bit. So you're forcing like a gap between the player and the enemy.
Yeah. There's another element to that. The part of it is that there's a great physical reaction to that. The other thing is a lot of players, especially players who aren't familiar with the genre or familiar with this kind of the zoning that's required, the close zoning of the game, it actually provides an aid to like create a bit more distance for that next slash, which
We did
which
have
a lot
like
of people
tests.
had a lot of trouble with.
Yeah, like early on, especially. I mean, earlier on, you actually had like a way smaller nail slash as well, which was maybe half this distance, which we increased. But yeah, we found kind of like people just holding left and attacking, which would then like bring you into the enemy because you weren't knocking them back far enough. So we added in that kickback and stuff. It's almost just like a consistency thing as well, because we added in like the bounce when you slash an enemy and aim downwards, so you get propelled off them. And then I got annoyed one day because I jumped and attacked an enemy upwards and then went into them and got hurt. So I added in a thing that made it so that your Y velocity just gets stopped when you slash upwards. So then it would be pretty weird if you didn't recoil horizontally anyway. So it's like if you that consistency, which is something we think about a lot, is part of like making the world seem real. If that things react kind of consistently.
I was just wondering, have either of you played Celeste?
Yeah, we both
I played through it.
And
Yeah, it was good.
just what you were saying in regards to the glitch in slashing down onto the spikes, that reminds me of the glitch that's in Celeste as well, where if you dash through to the next panel, you actually get your dashes back. And it's something that they just left in there, and they never told anyone, they never explained it, but it actually changes speedrunning the game completely. Like, it just means you can skip whole sections, you can jump over it, and that just reminded me a lot of it,
Yeah, a lot of stuff just stays in because it was just like a happy accident, and then it worked, so people kept it going.
And I was also wondering, another thing that's become a bit popularized with your game as well is speedrunning. And obviously you guys are pretty good playing through and watching you now. But what's it like? I was watching a speedrun today and someone finished it in around 35 minutes. What's it like creating such a beautiful, wonderful thing that you want people to really just take their time and enjoy the story?
We don't want players to do anything. We want them to do whatever they want to do. Like if their choice is to run it really fast, that is a fantastic choice, and we're glad that so many people would do it.
Plus, anyone that does that has played it a billion times before that to like get their route ready.
And it's not like we certainly were aware that there are speedrunners in the world, and were mindful of them when we made the game. In fact, one of the huge things about making this game was that we let players choose the route that they would like to go, and we don't try and constrain them on the path that we believe is best. We might sort of very subtly suggest paths that may be the paths of least resistance, but we want people to have their own journey, and we want them to have a personal journey, and we want them to discover their own things, so that when they talk about it with other people, they can talk about the different things that they've seen or found.
Yeah, we ended up. I mean, when we first designed the game, it had like a pretty tight progression path, which was kind of more traditional for like the the Metroid or Castlevania games that were some of the games that we were working from. And then we ended up making the decision to like open up a lot of paths, and kind of wherever we could see a spot where it felt like you should it would be good if you could skip this, or like decide to go this way and find a secret exit and go to like a whole other area. We tried to do that where we could think of it.
Yeah.
There's like
was it like planning for that then, when you don't know what skills a character might have when they get to a certain area of the map?
That is what it is. It's a very hard thing to do, but obviously we're playing the game hundreds of times over, so we're probably making small changes constantly all the way up to release, just to allow that to happen and to make sure there are enough safety catches in place for that when people do break the sequences of the game in ways that we don't expect, the game's not going to fall apart on them.
Yeah, and then there was only one spot where you could get to without double jump.
There was
down
one
in Kingdom's
little
Edge.
spot.
Yeah, and someone messaged us and was like, "Hey, I spent like a heap." They'd managed to do this thing which we hadn't even considered. Get to this like really late game bottom right of the world without double jump, and then they just got stuck and couldn't get up anymore. Maybe they probably could have bounced off something.
Yeah, it wasn't terrible, but it was a small thing.
So we added a platform.
It's probably like an element that brings up, which is that like a big part of this game. This game is kind of based on Metroid, and there's a quite popular genre called Metroidvania, which is sort of Castlevania and Metroid type games.
I think most people here will
Yeah,
probably
great.
know
They're
that.
not. Maybe some of the viewers, I'm not sure, but these are like non-linear exploration games, and one of the major elements of Hollow Knight, being very directly influenced by Metroid, is this ability to get lost, and literally get lost in the world, and it's in fact probably the core, one of the core tenets of the game. And the thing about getting lost is that's a pretty scary thing for a lot of people, and it's a huge. We have this enormous expectation on players. It requires like a huge investment for them. They have to retain a lot of knowledge in their head about layouts and things like that.
It's asking for a bit of trust from players as well. Like
yeah.
a trust that if they they do struggle through it, it's worth it, and that sometimes you have to build it up a bit.
So just on that getting lost, the map system has kind of seemed like it's a bit divisive between players about whether they want to engage with remembering their location and how much they want to remember about the world. Did that change at all, the implementation of it since?
In testing before release, it changed a little.
We made it better. It was harsher.
Yeah, it was harsher.
Yeah.
Speak about it?
Yeah. What was our? So I mean, at the beginning, when it was a very small game, we debated whether we'd even need a map, and we thought that was kind of cool. They'd like.
Cool.
I think. I mean, one of the things we really wanted to think about at the start was, I mean, Ari said that getting lost is part of the game, which it is, and then what we kind of wanted to be a big experience of the game was learning the area and finding your way around, and kind of like that kind of joy that comes from like mapping a space in your mind, and so we decided to include like the map and stuff, but we tried to think of ways to kind of encourage or reward people to kind of like really not spend too much time looking at the map, and like to kind of really like pay attention to the world and the landmarks and the space they're moving through.
There's an element in a lot of these Metroid and Metroidvania type games where the map is like almost your full focus, or it's certainly a large focus as you're progressing.
Like
and
a second screen.
It's like a
kinda.
second screen, and it's like a prescient thing that can tell you the layout of a room before you've even entered into the room. And we just want players to be focused, and we do actually think this works very successfully in the game, along with other elements like the challenge and things. People are really focused, like intensely focused on what's happening in the screen and not on that second screen. And one result certainly is what we see with a lot of players is if they do finish the game, they have an incredible understanding of the space, and they really know it themselves because they've experienced it so directly. And we even go so far, you may not be aware, but when you first enter an area, you don't have a map at all, and you'll often get it soon, like into that space, but you have to explore without anything, and that again really forces that that idea of
Immersion.
retaining the information.
Yeah, and
yourself.
that feeling of being in a whole new space where you're kind of walking through and there's nothing to rely on, but just kind of like starting to slowly feel your way through instead of like hitting select.
And that's
Bring
probably
up a
quite a
map straight
different.
away.
Yeah, it's a really distinctly different thing about the game, and we're like really glad that, obviously, so many people who have played it and respond positively to it.
I think that's
I've really enjoyed
the magic of the game, because the environments are so different, and the just where you are is a landmark for knowing the space.
Yep.
Because, because each of the areas has their own unique theme and environments and looks. And
Yeah, well, I mean, in a way, like by putting that pressure, or not that pressure, that kind of that responsibility on players to to find their way by looking at landmarks, it then kind of puts responsibility on us as designers to design it in a way that makes it so you can actually like learn the layout, so that it kind of feeds back into the way.
It's
you
also
construct
something
things.
that maybe like it's sort of maybe it's part of what creates those champions of the game, because if you have finished it and if you've gone through that process of being lost to learning this space, then you have this really powerful connection to it. You have that understanding, and people say that like learning in games is really one of the most impactful and memorable or effective things that it can do.
Cool. So it released, I think it was about the 25th of February last year now. So it's been a bit over a year now. And although there wasn't a crazy amount of reviews just coming out of every outlet, the reviews and critical element there was very high. And it was like, around 90 to 100 from most reviewers there. And most recently, in the past 6 months or so, you guys have been nominated for a couple awards for Hollow Knight, including debut game with the Game Awards, and also indie debut game, very similar with the BAFTAs as well. And you were in really great company there as well, with Cuphead, and even with the Game Awards, there was actually 3 Australian titles that was in for that, which was really cool to see. And I was just wondering, what's it been like going from just a project that you were sort of messing around with, enjoying, and did a Kickstarter, and found a bit of interest to getting critical reception from big websites, and then getting nominated for awards at some of the biggest game awards there is.
Yeah,
Tell
that
me,
stuff's
Will.
nice. But yeah, I mean that's cool. I mean, the biggest thing was, the amount of like just feedback from everyone that we got, or the amount of people playing it and talking about it. And you talk about like fan art and stuff, and people sending us like emails with like these really long kind of, they talk about their experiences with the game. That stuff was really good. The reviews were good. Like we had like a few reviews at the start. We had kind of like a low key release,
Which was exactly what it needed to be.
Yeah, which was good. It worked out really well for us.
We needed in the first 2 weeks. I mean, this is probably an indie game story. Like every indie game has this story, but we're a team of 3 people. We can't afford to pay testers or do anything like that, so we just ask our friends. Obviously, when it goes out to tens of thousands of people, things appear that we did not foresee. Which, if it had gone out with a full press sweep, pre-release, that mass of press probably would have seen all of that and gone, what the hell is going on? But a week or two, probably only a week after release, and these are small things, but they're kind of technical elements. All of that was gone, and then press did start to pick it up later, and certainly word of mouth was already good because people were having the experience that we talked about before. But those sort of things, particularly those small niggling things, if they end up in a review, they sit there forever, and that will forever colour the opinion of what the game is. I mean, it's not a terrible, like an awful thing, but it's not it wouldn't have been reflective of the game that existed 7 days after it had come out.
Right. And you did hire someone to help with marketing, Matthew Left Griffin, and he had a bit more, like he had the background in marketing and public relations as well, but particularly in streaming and Twitch community.
He did. His background was actually, he was a developer himself. He released several games. He worked on Risk of Rain I think he did the multiplayer for that. He made a game, published a game called Wanderlust, There was a sequel to that as well. These are on Steam. They're top-down games. So his main, like you said, his main background is he was a streamer because he liked streaming, and he had a lot of friends in that community. We're a small team. We don't have the bandwidth or the connections to go out to press in any large way, but because of him, we could push out to streamers. And this was a game that, as we were developing it, we were very much conscious the whole time of like, what would it be like when it's being streamed, which is probably like a very relevant thing for console and PC games. Like, is this an engaging thing to stream? And that's why, hopefully it was. But that's part of why there are so many surprises and interesting things in there. Matt connected it through to all of his friends, so it's really just talking to his friends and saying, "Hey, this is a game. I'll give you a free key, and would you like to play it?"
Right.
And it's that. It really is that. And then if the game was engaging enough with his streaming friends, then other streamers watch other streamers all the time. If they think it's interesting, then they'll reach out, and then it can spread.
Right.
And then obviously when the people who are watching those streams, if they take an interest, may buy the game.
Because so often people think that the best way to get seen is, and it's definitely changing, but for a very long time, it's the best way to see is to get on IGN, to get on PC Gamer or GameSpot or wherever it is. But obviously, you guys have seen a pretty good success, and that's more through that grassroots and through the streaming.
Yeah, that stuff's great too. But as a tiny team, you can't necessarily shout that loud. Like you might be able to, but one thing we can definitely do is say, "Hey Matt, can you give this to your friends on Twitch?" And that's
a lot of it's a good community as well. So a lot of people were playing it, telling other people about it, giving their experiences, telling little stories of like weird stuff that happened in the game. Again, like there's kind of like weird moments that make a game kind of like shareable.
There's like tons of that stuff in this. Like a big part of the game is like, and the whole idea is like, is there stuff to talk about? Like, are there things for people to actually say online when they play the game? Because the most important thing is people are talking about this game.
That's true. Yeah, we considered a bunch of stuff like that. Like we made sure like you knew the names of the characters, which was partly just, and we did it. But when we talked about it, it seemed important that people would know the names of characters and bosses, so that it made it a lot easier to talk about the game. So it was like the locations and stuff.
Yeah, everything has a name. There's a little bit like enough dialogue in there for people to cling on to. There's a little bit of challenge, but not an excessive amount of challenge, and I think that is crucially important. Which is one, it makes. I mean, obviously, individually, if you're playing by yourself, it makes your achievements feel rewarding. It makes you like a part of the community or a champion or someone who's like really willing to talk about it if you've managed to achieve those things. The other thing is there's a really good reason for other players to go online and ask questions and say, "Hey, I'm having trouble with this thing," or "Hey, I'm lost here. Can someone help me out?" And that creates so much more dialogue around the game
and community
around the game who are like discovering better ways of doing things or faster ways of getting around than if you could just sit there and put it on easy and the game would play itself. And certainly we do try and allow an easy playthrough of the game, but the way we do that instead is, "Hey, look, here's a challenge over here, but if you're not up for that challenge yet, you can go this other way. Why don't you go explore this other way, and you'll potentially find something there that is going to make that a lot easier. Or you're going to go and find the whole rest of the game, and you'll come back, and that thing that was once difficult is going to be a piece of cake."
I do like that you acknowledge that it can be difficult, and thanks for persevering.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's also like it's just
part of being engaged with the world.
Engage with games. Like it's like a healthy thing to have a challenge and to push through that challenge and to come through the other side, and to feel like you've learnt something, or you've just had the tenacity to stick with it, and then the reward is look at this world that I've just stumbled upon, or look at this site, or this creature that I've met, or this friend that I've made.
Do you have more questions? One of the last ones I would probably want to ask is just about DLC, planning DLC, and how you make that fit into the world, because you've got a big world, and then you're doing more content and putting more characters into this already existing space. And how do you think about that and plan that to put like, extra bosses in there or something?
Well, some things we just draw on the whiteboard and we think they're funny, and we like that has to be in there.
Yeah,
So
we have. So I mean, so the DLC that the extra content that we've released 2 of these what we call free content packs, and we also had like a mini content pack we just released along with a bunch of kind of game refinements, and we're releasing a 3rd content pack later this year, which and yeah, they're like maybe not quite on like a DLC level, but they're free for all players.
the 3rd one is.
Yeah, the 3rd one's pretty big. Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it was the first DLC pack, content pack, which is called Hidden Dreams, was largely like ideas that we had after the game was released. That we were after when we thought of them, we're like, oh man, it really should have been in like some bosses that would, because there are in the game you can find like dream versions of bosses that are harder and more interesting. And we sort of thought of like a couple of other really good ones we could have included. We thought maybe we could just like sneak them in to like patch notes, I think was like one idea. And then we thought we'll bundle up a lot of these ideas that we've had, or like a couple of like quality of life things that people requested. Like we added like a warp ability and like an extra stag station, which is like your quick map, into this first content pack. Bundled that up and thought it'd be more interesting if we kind of like made it its own kind of thing. And that stuff all just kind of integrates into the game. It's one thing about that kind of makes it easier with this content pack stuff is everyone has it, so we don't need to worry about the case where someone has not bought a DLC and have like a nice gating mechanism for it. It can just populate into the world.
It's also way nicer for us that like it's free, because it's a nice way of giving something more to the people who've played the game.
It's also nice that everyone has it, like everyone can talk about it. Everyone has the same.
That's true.
It's nice to have it
we're not
split.
splintering the audience. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we don't mind. We certainly would play DLC content, but we certainly much prefer the idea of it just the world just expanding naturally, and probably it goes to like the core of what we want to do when we're developing games, which is we want to keep them, we want to give people heaps of value, because that's like, and it's not that hard because we really love making the content, and like we said, in the specifics of it, it's fast, they're bugs, it's cheap, for us to kind of, it's not, and I'm probably making light of it, there's still a lot of work there, but like, it's sort of the model, like the ideal model that we like for games, I suppose, to see that this big world and it just gets, and the developers are actually, we're certainly really passionate about the world and we love the characters and we love seeing new characters appear in that world.
This update's really good as well because it's, there's like a really big community that build up around it, and because there's these kind of like frequent-ish content updates coming out, and B, no one misses out, then it's something that the whole community can get really excited about and kind of can count down to. And then we'll release it, and then they can all like run out and kind of try and find where we've hidden all this stuff, and like coordinate with each other. And then there's like a buzz while they're kind of finding everything,
which is super exciting for us as well.
Yeah, and that's cool. Yeah, it's a really nice reward to kind of watch people go through all that stuff.
I think we've gone a bit long now, so
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
maybe open it up if that's happy with that.
Sure thing.
Yeah.
Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, if you have any questions, just raise your hand. We can't answer
It's
that.
one to the left.
We have a few. I think you were first.
Was it AIE in the design school, and they said we can QA this game called Hollow Knight, and we had a blast, the whole class. Do you remember that? Did you find that valuable?
We certainly do.
Yeah.
And we found it really valuable.
It was really good.
In fact, there was one really critical bug that was discovered through that process, I believe.
Was it something to do with the shade, or
Maybe. It was the biggest, and it was like, it was 10 times the QA team that we had. So it was a massive...
it was really obvious that, you'd spend a lot of effort like breaking it in interesting ways that we hadn't considered. Which is, it was heaps good. It was that was really, really helpful to us. That was like, shortly before we did our public beta, maybe? I can't remember. Maybe it was way earlier than that.
Yeah.
But it was good.
And we've since, we're actually... the QA now is really just us reaching out to the community, and that's been really great. So now, what was a small team is huge because we have such a direct relationship with the community guys and with the people on the Discord and the people in the Reddit. and on error, and we can just talk to them and say, like, you know, what are you interested in? Like, how's this working?
What's broken?
What's broken? And often the answer is a lot, and we have to get working on that.
Yeah, we're in the public beta phase now, where we've got this big like lifeblood update, and a lot of that has just been us pushing it up to Steam, and then just whoever's interested can opt in to this optional public beta and just report stuff to us.
Yes. Oh, sorry. I think you.
How early on did you get like Chris involved with like the music part?
Did he? Sorry, just. For
Oh
the
yeah,
like-
sorry. So how early on did we get Chris, who is the composer and sound designer, involved? Did he come to us during the Kickstarter or shortly after?
I think it was a little bit after.
Yeah, he because you know we got contacted by a lot of sound developers and stuff. He'd had, as part of his pitch, he'd written like a few bits of music.
Is that right?
Yeah, do you remember, like, really short? And one of them is the royal theme that's in the game.
Ah,
Because that's the one
do
I said
not
I really
remember.
liked.
That's
and
cool.
like I was, yeah.
I'd previously worked with Chris on short film stuff, so I was certainly aware of his talents. And he did music and he did the sound design for the game, which is like brilliant sound design. And we slammed him with this game. Like, we just absolutely
Like the scope of
smashed
it,
him.
he may not have been.
Yeah,
no one's
and
been
we're just like, no, we're redoing this. Oh, this one's too intense. And I mean,
He
the
made
thing
like
is,
10 new levels.
yeah, he was creating like beautiful music, like incredible tracks, and some of those tracks, you know, which is just the way this works. As incredible as they were, all the case was is they didn't fit the pace of an area or something like that, or the pace of what we wanted.
As with most of our stuff, we use most of it though.
I
Even
think
stuff that he
later on,
wrote,
not much.
like he wrote in as like a short, like speculative stuff. I found a place to put it, which was always
true.
nice.
The game is like very dense with music as well, which is
Yeah, and he started working on what, like pretty early. I can't remember. Like, I mean, so maybe like, you know, after the Kickstarter, like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months. I can't. Yeah, we started getting like music and sound in pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's definitely good to have sound in early because you get so many cues from sound.
We had a main theme really quickly, I think. The theme that you hear, Dirtmouth was maybe the first music that we had. Either Dirtmouth or the main theme. Yeah.
For those who don't know, Chris Larkin is a composer from Adelaide, and he's awesome, and he's worked on a bunch of games, like Chris Johnson's Expand as well, and also with Hipster Well. So if you're doing production grants from the government, keep him in mind, yeah.
You might be a bit busy.
Yeah, we're certainly keeping him busy.
Yeah. We have one more question? Yeah.
I mean, this gentleman sort of broached it a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Talking about the music side of things, but I
Yep.
guess quickly, if you could explain how Chris was involved in more of a role than you as an average composer would be, in that he was doing sound design as well. How did you integrate the music that he was writing and his effects into games?
All right. Do you want to talk about like the kind of STEM system, or is that?
Yeah, that's cool. So the music system.
Just for the.
Oh yeah, sorry. So the question basically was, you know, Chris's music and sound. How was it integrated into the game? Like, what did we use? So Chris made the music, and it was us who we kind of implemented it in uni, just using our own like logic system. The game, the music, and this is something that we decided we wanted pretty quickly, has in a lot of sections of the game what we call like a STEM system, where like layers of the music can peel on and off depending on where you are. So for instance, the Crossroads, which is that first area I played through, that blue cave area, the Crossroads track has 3 layers in it. It's got like a main track, it's got kind of like a softer sub track, and then it's got an action track. And so for most of the time, you've got like the main track and the sub, which is kind of like the bass behind it. And then as you kind of go into the side areas or the quieter areas, we peel away, just fade out. It's just like, it's literally just 3 tracks being played at once. And then we've got like some logic on there to make sure they sync up every loop. And then you can peel away the main track, so you've just got like the kind of the fainter instruments, which gives you like a nice feeling of place, and also gives you like a nice feeling of being off the beaten path, which is kind of like a good, almost like subconscious message to the player saying that, hey, you know, this is like a side path. So if you're looking for like the main objective, you might want to go back. And there's like an action track as well. So like if you that big dude with the club who was trying to get me, not the bigger dude, but an earlier guy, when one of the many guys with clubs that attacked me during my playthrough, You know, like when you approach him and he wakes up, we then bring in like the action track, which is like a percussive thing, and that plays until he's gone, and that fades out. Yeah, so that was one of the big things we wanted to do, and that worked out really well. So Chris, I think, would just like, we compose the track as one thing, and then we kind of pick a few instruments to kind of break out into their other parts.
Remember, Chris is making this music digitally as well, so those layers already exist. It's just a case of him delivering them in independent parts.
I guess doing it digitally would be it would mean you would be able to take on your editing requests and do them.
Yeah, the fact that he did the music digitally was a huge help to us. I suppose even if we could have afforded live orchestral renditions, we would have still gone through the whole digital process first, worked out exactly what we needed.
He did actually record some live vocals for the City of Tears, which we didn't end up using because it didn't fit. But then we had a backer had their backer character, which was like a ghost. They wanted like a singer butterfly. So we're like, all right, well, we'll just have this vocal version of the track play when you go into this stage with this singer butterfly worked out. So that's like a nice case of A, like a good idea coming from a backer, and B, finding like somewhere to like place this stuff that had been made. That was really nice, and we made it so you could like press a button to kind of sit down and listen to us sing. And that's like one of those moments that people like really like, and you see like in the Steam like art section for a game, people can post like fan art, but a lot of them people post screenshots, and you see like a lot of screenshots of that moment. So you can kind of tell that, which kind of moments in the game kind of make people stop.
And that just happens so naturally with just so many things coming together as well.
Yeah, it's just, it just made sense.
Any more questions from the live stream?
We've got a guy over here.
Yeah.
Like with your reviews and stuff, have you ever heard of this guy called Joseph Anderson?
Yeah,
Have you ever heard of Joseph Anderson?
I
Who's that?
He does his long YouTubes.
Yeah. To be fair, William knows about the internet, and I do not.
Like having that longer analytical style, did you learn anything from that?
What was it, William? Do you want to just explain what the video was?
Yeah, it was good. He one thing is that he was really good at it, and he was talking about how it could have
Is
been
this the
harder.
guy that played it 4 times?
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, I heard about this. Yeah.
I did watch it. Yeah, no, it was good. Like a lot
Really
of it,
cool.
kind of along with everyone else's kind of feedback, it was super useful. He went into depth about his trek into Deep Nest and how he had that initial
Cool.
that loop. Probably talked about a lot of other stuff. People's feedback in general, we take it all on board. Whether it is that kind of that really well laid out analytic stuff, or just over listening to a lot of people talking about it, you learn those kind of key moments or key points that really stick out to people, or that are that are friction points or whatever.
We have within this game. I mean, this is just one game, but we have some idea for what we like in video games and what the type of ethos that we believe in when we're developing video games, which is largely just because we play and have played so many games and built up that. I think a big thing for us and the business going ahead is it's really about having many games, so developing lots of games. So players, I mean, I think a lot of players are can get it even from this, but can start to see the through line between our work and what it is that we actually really value in our work, what it is that we value in games, in all ways, whether that's art and music and the consistency of it all.
They know it's a team trade product. They kind of know what they're getting into, and they know the values.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that actually really helps, as you go forward. When you're coming out as an unknown developer and you have one game, people have no touchstone. Everyone who saw this game, or no, I'm not going to say everyone, but certainly there was a lot of sentiment which was, it looks like that game Ori, which we've never played, but it looks fantastic, and apparently it is fantastic by all accounts. And I'm sure we'll be able to get some time once we
There's a sequel.
Get
So
off
just
it.
wait till then.
All right, we'll wait till the sequel and buy a bundle pack or something. But it's the big thing is when we release other games, people can relate it back to Hollow Knight now, and they can see the type of things that we really prize, and the style of game that we really love.
Cool. Do we have any more questions at all?
With the spotlight on you
How Team Cherry what? Sorry.
goes
What?
forward.
So
How
maybe-
does-
just
so,
should we repeat
so
the
being
question?
yes, like with the spotlight on us,
Or
as
on
a
Hollow
result,
Knight,
on
probably,
Hollow Knight
yeah.
specifically, certainly, yeah, not very much on us at all. Has that altered the way that Team Cherry goes forward and how we?
Oh. I mean, probably the only one thing that it has changed is that we can go forward. But, there was a question of ideally, we'll be able to keep going with it, and the fact that it's done well means that we can.
Yeah, saying that, it's probably also important to realise that the game has been very successful, and we're super grateful for that. It was made on a really low budget. It was all very constrained. It was a team of 3 people. It only had to succeed within a very reasonable number of sales for us to develop another game. And the really important thing for us is, like we were just saying for the previous question, developing numerous games so people can start to see the through line and see the values in our products. And then it's actually easier for people to start buying into those games. So the really important element there is we make sure that we don't change the way we produce things, because people see a lot of value in this.
We haven't, and we're not.
No, and we certainly we
it's
certainly
like a good
haven't, yeah.
pace, and we're not looking to expand too much or start making 3D mech games or whatever.
We're not making
or,
that mistake.
Yeah. If it's like a year ago, go into VR or whatever.
So we're not doing
it's
anything fancy. Consistency is important across products, certainly as much as it is within a single world like this.
And we get on something that's fun to make and
Yeah.
does well.
That's
so.
it. It's super entertaining to make. We keep the culture the same as it was, or very similar to what it was with this game, for the next games, for the next 10 years, and for the next 20 years, whatever, as long as we can keep doing it. And that's the end goal. Like, can we keep doing that? Because while we're doing it, we're challenged and entertained and, having fun.
Well, I think we've taken enough of your time tonight, and everyone else's. It's probably starting together. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. So, thank you so much for coming and doing this presentation with us.
Yeah, cheers. It was
Thanks,
good.
guys.
Fun.
Thanks,